All right, I apologize for the late start, but we do want to call our meeting to order of the Santa Clarita Valley Sanitation District. Just some quick housekeeping. We will take, because we do have a closed session item, so we will take public comment first, just a general public comment on items that are not specifically on the agenda. Then we will go through the agenda. If there are comments on the closed session item, we will take those. We'll recess to closed session, and then we will return for the rest of the items with the staff presentation. So just some housekeeping for those of you that are wishing to speak. With that, I would like to call the meeting to order and ask for a roll call, please.
Smythe.
Here.
West. Here. Ridley Thomas and Barger not present, but we do have a quorum. I do have two speakers that have requested for items not listed on the agenda. Carmelis Nodelmeyer, if you'd like to join us at the podium.
And again, similar to our city council meetings, we do have a 3-minute per speaker. I don't think are the lights, so our timer lights, are we good? Okay, so we should have the same lighting system as we do for the council meetings. So, Ms. Nodelmeyer, the floor is yours.
Yes, Carmelis Nodelmeyer. Let's make it formal. I attended the May pre-meetings in May, 2 of them that were held at the sports complex with regard to these issues. And what I'm really upset about is the reply. I attended both of the meetings. One was in the afternoon, one was in the evening. And I believe I spoke at both of them. I believe other people did, presented documentation. Yet at the first meeting, in the afternoon, they say there was no public comment. There's nothing in the what is being presented. So I really question that when it's such an important issue and the few people that show up really were interested in the issue. I also know that there was written comments that were submitted. I don't see them in the file either. Then in the evening one, they have that I was the only one that spoke. Again, I doubt that, but when I looked at the comments and the reply, they really just brushed off the concerns that we have with the change to the treatment plant on site with toxic chemicals. And those chemicals are going to be going right by our HOA on the 5 freeway. And they won't give any, they said no, I could read it to you what they reply, but they say, oh, well, that'll all be decided later, what they are, how they used, how we'll store them. No, that's not acceptable. Those things should have been available to the public exactly. You know that because you're the ones that changed it, and you changed it at the last minute with not only treating it there, but the type of program you're using on site, really condensing them down, which will take a lot of chemicals. So I'm really complaining about how those 2 meetings were handled, and the public basically was ignored.
All right, Mr. Cameron.
Good evening. A couple of items that are of significant interest. One is, upon occasion, maybe only a few thousand times, not probably more than that, a phrase has been introduced regarding the conduct of the district regarding the, quote, assessment of fines. And there's phenomenally good news for our community on that subject. The news is not all that great for someone who would care to issue those fines. It's not good for someone who would care to not defend against those fines. But here's the extraordinary news. Anyone affected by the fines has an absolute legal right to enter and intervene into the levy issue and mount a defense against the issue of the fines, whether or not anyone else does that. So the really good news is the days of uncontested fines levied against the citizens of Santa Clarita are over. Number two, there is an omission which doesn't directly bear with other issues that is really important to fully understand. That is that there seems to be a crippling of the asset of the Saugus sewage treatment plant. Over and over, there's a phrase that says, it cannot be expanded, and that's the end of the discussion. That is actually very inaccurate. The city of Santa Clarita, directly contiguous to the Saugus treatment plant, owns 231 acres of vacant land. It's owned it now for over 25 years. Now, what that means is, because the Saugus plant is centrally located in the community that needs to be served with the dispensation of recycled water, the Saugus site is incredibly superior to the Valencia plant, which is on the far western side of the community, rendering any dispersion of critically needed recycled water virtually impossible to provide in an affordable manner. But the Saugus plant is not bothered by that. Number one, it's an existing plant. Number two, the city of Santa Clarita owns that land, so the two of you only need to convince one other member of the city council that it would be advisable for the benefit of Santa Clarita citizens that the city of Santa Clarita and the sanitation district enter into a simple agreement that the vacant land, not all of the 231 acres, of course, but the vacant land of the Saugus plant could be, should be, and must be given over to beneficial uses for all the areas of Santa Clarita that surround it almost in an equilateral distance. So that's really good news for the citizens of our community.
Thank you for your.
All right, very good, thank you. At this time, we'll take, I believe items 1 and 2 are the consent?
Yes.
Correct, all right, is there a motion?
Was there staff response to public speakers,
If so desired?
or just before we?
With respect to Ms. Noltemeyer, we did have a court reporter at the May meetings, and those transcripts are included in the EIR. So that's the record of the meeting. And the record of the meeting that we have as recorded in the transcript is that for the afternoon meeting, we had one written comment that was submitted and no verbal public comments. For the evening meeting, we do have Ms. Noltemeyer speaking as the only speaker in the evening meeting with no written comments submitted. With regard to the chemicals that we use or our plant will ultimately use in the chloride compliance project, because the design and the operations process plan has not been finalized in detail. So but we do say in the response to her that any chemicals that we handle today or in the future would be handled in accordance with state and federal law and regulations. The brine itself is not hazardous, or will not be hazardous. With respect to Mr. Cameron's comments about the expansion of the Saugus plant, we have two treatment plants, the Saugus plant and the Valencia plant. Those receive wastewater from areas that drain to those locations. The terrain around the Saugus plant is hilly and would be a constraint for expanding the plant, even if you needed to do that. But as he was suggesting, if I heard him correctly, was to divert water through Valencia up to Saugus, and that would be, again, you'd have to pump water from one treatment plant to the other when it is not currently going there. So that's my comments.
All right, thank you.
We need a motion for item 1 and 2.
Yes.
So moved.
Second? And without objection, or do we need a roll call on consent, or can we?
That consent is fine.
Okay.
Items 1 and 2 are passed unanimously. Item 3 is regarding annexation number 1086 to the district. It's an A and B item.
Very good. Can we take both items together, or do we need to do separate motions on each?
We can take them together.
Right? Unless there's any staff comments on that. All right, I'll look for a motion on item 3.
So moved.
So that'll be items A and B with the second.
Okay, items 3A and B were approved unanimously. Item 4 is regarding a closed session discussion for Affordable Clean Water Alliance versus Santa Clarita Valley Sanitation District, court case number as listed on the agenda, and case number also listed on the agenda. We do have one speaker for this item, Alan Cameron.
All right, Mr. Cameron, same deal, 3 minutes, and then, again, once we conclude that, we'll recess to closed session.
I think I heard about a 3-minute limit one time in my life. Thank you for reminding me. There's ongoing litigation regarding the chloride compliance situation, as everyone in this room who's involved with it fully understands. I can share with you that the litigants are very interested in a constructive solution and have been for about 4 years. During that time, multiple suggestions, offers, communications to constructively discuss the differences that exist, seek transcendent solutions that would serve everybody's needs, eliminate confusion, and on have been pro-offered. As of tonight, those offers to have those discussions have been routinely rejected. I would hope that would not be the case going forward, because if you can't talk and you can't communicate, no resolution is going to occur.
All right, very good. Mr. Attorney, Counselor, do we have, do you need to read a statement or anything before we go into closed session?
The only statement I would make to what Mr. Cameron just said is that he's incorrect with regard to routinely brushed off. We've addressed every communication that had suggested any kind of a settlement. We've just not been able to have a meeting of the minds with regard to what kind of a settlement that would entail. With regard to the closed session item that's before you, I believe it's in the best interest of the district to meet in closed session to discuss this matter under the government code section that is listed in the agenda, and I would request a vote taking us into closed session.
All right, is there a motion to recess to closed session?
Motion to recess.
Second?
Okay, we are now in closed session.
All right, we will move to the Century Room, and we will reconvene when we conclude.
Chairman, I would, if there aren't any questions from the board, I would request a vote taking us back into open session.
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Chairman, no action was taken while in closed session that requires a report under the provisions of the California Government Code.
Very good, thank you. All right, we will take up, I believe we are, what are we on, item number 5. Again, we will receive a staff presentation and then go to public participation, public comment after that. So,
Item 5 is regarding the Santa Clarita Valley Sanitation District chloride compliance. Item A is to adopt the resolution of Board of Directors of the Santa Clarita Valley Sanitation District of Los Angeles County, decertifying the Santa Clarita Valley Sanitation District Chloride Compliance Facility Plan and Final Environmental Impact Report. Item B is to adopt the resolution of said district, decertifying the final Santa Clarita Valley Sanitation District Chloride Compliance brine concentration and limited trucking supplemental EIR. Item C is to adopt the resolution of said board certifying final recirculated Santa Clarita Valley Sanitation District Chloride Project Environmental Impact Report, separation of recycled water project, making findings in fact, and adopting mitigation, monitoring, and reporting program. Item D is to adopt the resolution of the Board of Directors of this district approving chloride compliance project.
Good evening, board members and members of the public. Go ahead. The Santa Clarita Valley Sanitation District is the public agency that collects and treats wastewater from homes and businesses in the Santa Clarita Valley. These flows ultimately go to one of 2 districts' wastewater treatment plants, what we call water reclamation plants, that discharge high-quality treated water to the Santa Clara River. And you see those two plants here, the Valencia Water Reclamation Plant and the Saugus Water Reclamation Plant. The discharge of the treated wastewater to the river is only allowed by permits issued by the Regional Water Quality Control Board and is governed by state and federal law. The Regional Water Quality Control Board is the state agency responsible for enforcing state and federal laws that protect water quality. The permits that we operate under set a limit for the amount of chloride in the treated water that we discharge to the river. Additional treatment equipment is needed because our treatment plants are not designed currently to remove chloride. We are required to have our compliance solution fully operational by July 2019, and failure to meet this deadline could result in regulatory fines that the Santa Clarita Valley property owners would be responsible for. The district has been working diligently to complete environmental review, which will be followed by completion of design of the new treatment facilities to remove chloride, construction of the new facilities, and startup of the facilities. The schedule to meet the compliance deadline is approximately 1 year to 18 months behind schedule due to the court ruling to delay the work on the chloride compliance project, and I'll discuss that further in a few slides. This slide shows a little bit of the history of the environmental documentation and analysis of the chloride compliance project. In 2013, after comprehensive public involvement, the Santa Clarita Valley Sanitation Districts completed a Master's Facilities Plan and associated environmental impact report. The EIR covered 3 components that you see in the light blue boxes. The advanced treatment for chloride removal, ultraviolet light disinfection, and deep well injection for the disposal of the salty water or brine that's a byproduct of the advanced treatment. There was an independent component of the 2013 IR that was the reduction of treatment plant discharges to the river so that more recycled water could be reused by the community. After extensive public input, community meetings, and environmental review, the Board of Directors certified an EIR and approved a chloride compliance project in 2013. Later, in response to concern, the board approved pursuing an alternative brine management to replace the previously proposed deep well injection approach. And in March 2016, the board adopted a supplemental EIR that evaluated a new approach of brine concentration equipment located at the Valencia Water Reclamation Plant and limited trucking of brine to an existing industrial facility. And so the components of the chloride compliance project that you see in this box. Next one. The adequacy of that 2013 EIR was legally challenged. While our 2016 supplemental EIR on trucking the brine was being finalized in February 2016, the Los Angeles County Superior Court issued a ruling on the adequacy of the 2013 EIR. While the court did not find fault with the environmental analysis related to the chloride compliance project, it did order more study of the potential impacts to the stickleback fish in relation to the reduction of discharge for the recycled water reuse component. And regarding that study, the study on the potential impacts on the stickleback fish, the district has begun consulting with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife to continue and conduct that study, but the work to complete that study in consultation with the Department of Fish and Wildlife will take longer than anticipated due to the extensive nature of the regulatory consultation necessary. And in response to previous board direction, we are fully committed to pursuing recycled water resources for the community, and we will continue to work with the Department of Fish and Wildlife on completing the stickleback analysis to supplement the work done in the 2013 study. After completion of that stickleback study, we would issue a separate CEQA document prepared for the recycled water project. In the meantime, to comply with the chloride compliance project, to minimize fines to the ratepayers, the Sanitation District decided to pursue the recycled water project separate from the chloride compliance project. And the district's choice to proceed in this manner was based on the regional board state mandated chloride limit, the related deadlines for compliance with that limit, the extensive California Fish and Wildlife requirements imposed on the recycled water project, and the guidance and direction from the court on the 2013 case. However, in June of 2016, the court did determine that the district could not proceed with the chloride compliance project until we had studied the potential impacts of implementing the chloride compliance project separately from the recycled water project. So, and that's the topic of our report today. So you see in this box, you see this is the previous box you saw. That was where we ended up with the chloride compliance project. What you have before you today is the final recirculated EIR, and that's has been prepared to address the court's order. And in order to facilitate implementation of the chloride project mandated by the state, this recirculated EIR includes the same components as the 2013 EIR. It includes the 2016 supplemental EIR on trucking the brine. It updates sections where appropriate, and it evaluates potential impacts from separating the chloride project from the recycled water project and associated stickleback study that you see each of those components on the right side of the slide. So the final recirculated EIR is the single new operative CEQA document for the chloride compliance project. Separation of the recycled water project from the chloride compliance project would generally reduce impacts on environmental resource areas that we previously studied in the 2013 EIR and the 2016 supplemental EIR, with no significant changes to current operations. Resource areas that were updated in the final recirculated EIR before you include the resource areas shown here: air quality, biological resources, hydrology and water quality, cumulative impacts, alternatives, growth inducement, and water resources. All the other resource areas incurred no changes relative to the 2013 EIR or the 2016 supplemental EIR. As a result of separating the recycled water project from the chloride compliance project. The recirculated EIR concluded that the analysis of these resource areas did not result in any new or substantially modified mitigation measures relative to the two previous EIR documents, and all resource areas would sustain no impact or less than significant impact. Although no new mitigation measures are identified in this recirculated EIR, there are still a number of mitigation measures included in the project that have been identified to reduce or avoid environmental impacts. You see some examples shown on this slide. For example, biological surveys would be needed in certain areas before construction to make sure that protected species are not harmed. And in some areas, an archaeologist would need to survey the area prior to construction and may need to monitor our digging activities. Several measures would be taken to limit noise during construction, and traffic management plans would be implemented for work in roadways. This slide shows a summary of the public and agency review process that we followed for the recirculated EIR. It began at the top with the release of the notice of preparation, which was followed by a comment period intended to help define the scope of the environmental review. We did hold 2 scoping meetings on March 7th in the afternoon and in the evening. The draft recirculated EIR was released on May 3rd and was available for public review until June 19th, 2017. During the public review comment, we had 2 public hearings on May 25th. We received comments, both oral and written, And I can summarize those comments for you now, or we will be taking public comment after this, and we can wait till afterwards, and I can respond to both of those things together. That concludes my presentation.
Very good, thank you. All right, we'll go to public participation on this. And again, as with the other items, you have 3 minutes.
Carmelis Nodelmeyer.
I believe you should have a copy of my comments before you, and I hope you understand them, because I'm sure you'll be dealing with them shortly. What I am very upset and perturbed about this is that we're having the game of the 100,000, and gee, we have to do this, and oh my, we're doing it for your benefit. I believe you spent 143,000 on your environmental report. 143,000. Way back when, if we had anyone up there that was really representing the community, that 100 limit would have been challenged a long time ago. Now you can read here and you can see how you're playing with it since 2014. That's actually what you're doing. You're just playing with it and saying, oh, we need it here, we need it. Oh, I am so sick of what I keep hearing with regard to that. It seems to me it's more like what I have on here at the Castaic Lake Water Agency, that is promising reclaimed water to everybody, every way they can, and in every project. And they're just trying to confirm in here that you're going to keep up your 1,600 acre feet per year for them. And this really raises some questions. That maybe this is being delayed for the endangered species here because you're afraid of how much water, reclaimed water, your sewer water, you're going to have to put in the river. Probably a much more than you already have. I think that's why you're so afraid of this. And meanwhile, you want CLWA to keep going on saying, as they did, if you ever read what you're approving, that, gee, we want to promise it to everybody. So you're doing that now. And I think it's a big game that you're playing. And it's a very bad game. And I think all of you deserve, everybody in this community, a water softener because of the game you played with that. And you're continuing it. And I'm very insulted that the county doesn't even have the nerve to show up here.
Susan Durbin, and after that will be Alan Cameron.
Good evening. Honorable members of the board, council, district personnel. My name is Susan Durbin. I'm with the Silverstein Law Firm, representing the Affordable Clean Water Alliance, ACWA. Please let the record reflect that I am now handing to the board secretary a written copy of our comments on the final SEIR. I have also given her a copy to date and confirm receipt of. I also have copies here for all board members. Let the record also reflect that we're taking part in this hearing under protest and a reservation of rights. Mr. Silverstein, on behalf of ACWA, asked that the board postpone its consideration of this item until the district has produced all documents that it is obliged to produce under the California Public Records Act in pursuant to a request from our firm, and which it has not yet produced. We feel we are prejudiced by not having all the documents in the district's possession that bear on these issues. Also, I'd like to orally supplement our written comments very briefly as to air quality. Yes, there is an air quality mitigation measure, but we feel it is ineffective. It requires the use of Tier 3, that's the Air Resources Board's Tier 3, diesel equipment and construction, but the only real requirement is that the contractor must attempt to get Tier 3 documents and document all efforts to do so. If the contractor cannot get Tier 3 equipment, contractor is allowed to use Tier 2 equipment rather than installing, for example, retrofit devices to control NOx or particulates. We believe that is a failure to take all reasonable and feasible steps to control air quality emissions. But the basic thrust of our comments is that we object to the representation and the belief by the district that the recycled water component can be separated from the chloride removal component of this project. While the FSEIR argues that it has been separated, the district's overall content and its general representations to the public show the opposite, that it still regards the overall project as including both components, which it should. Since from the time that the Regional Water Quality Control Board set the TMDL for chloride, the object has been to produce cleaner effluent. That effluent will be deployed in some fashion, and that should be considered at the very minimum as a cumulative impact in the EIR. As it stands now, that EIR is inadequate. Thank you.
Alan Cameron, and then Keith Pritzker.
Thank you. Please let the record show that I'm submitting, on behalf of Comprehensive Development Consulting, comments on my final EIR. I also owe the district and Mr. Bevlin an apology. I was incorrect when I said there's no communication between the parties. I phrased it wrong. It was just a factual misstatement. There has been communication. It's been non-productive. It did not ever rise to the level of a face-to-face meeting. So what I said was incorrect, but it is true that no productive dialogue indeed has occurred, but I apologize for the misstatement. Also, I have to say that the individual fronting this environmental document, Ms. Lanza, was absolutely immaculate in her professionalism and customer service-oriented behavior. It was as good or better than any public agency with which I am familiar, and she did an outstanding job of the areas for which she was responsible. There is so much distortion of this issue that there's no way in 3 minutes, 30 minutes, 300 or 3,000 minutes that I could verbally address it all. But the Chloride Compliance Project is a recycled water project. It's not just some independent mechanism that exists in the abstract. The purpose of the project is to make recycled water available to so-called downstream users. So to characterize it as being separate from recycled water is completely inaccurate. In addition to that, Ms. Hyde mentioned again the issue of fines. Right now, the Santa Cruz Valley Sanitation District is under control of the Superior Court of California, and it's attempting to reconcile the defects summarized to some degree in the project. While the district is attempting to comply with a court order, there is no way that fines that could be issued that would be binding and would stick. Now, the Regional Water Quality Control Board might try to fine the district, but if that happens, the district merely has to go back to court and say, excuse me, but we're in the process of complying with the court order. We cannot be fined for that. And the good news, as I mentioned earlier, is if the district fails to do that, this community will do it for the district. So and by the way, Ms. Hyde mentioned about the Saugus plant and the Valencia plant. I was not saying that water should be pumped from Valencia to Saugus. I was referring to the fact that the general plans for Santa Cruz Valley move the population from 270 to almost 500,000. At minimum, the expansion of the Saugus plant could and should and must take that water at an expanded site
Thank you
from
for
the
your
new general
comments.
plan.
Your time has elapsed. Keith Pritzker, and then Tim Ben Boydston.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Councilmember West. It's always a pleasure to see you. I want to speak as a local resident. As you may know, I live west of I-5. I live about a mile from the location for this proposed brine concentration project. And I'm very grateful that this Sanitation District Board decided a couple years ago to eliminate the option of deep well injection, especially in light of the stories that have circulated nationally about the many hundreds and maybe even thousands of earthquakes in Oklahoma as a result of underground injection in an area that's not known for earthquakes. But we are concerned as local residents. I'm speaking on my own behalf, but also I have a daughter and grandchildren who live close by, about the details of this proposed project. Now, in the document that is before you for consideration, one of the attachments is a letter that was submitted by the Silverstein Law Firm on March 23rd of 2016 to the Sanitation District. And on pages 16 and 17, under a heading of sub D as in dog, it talks about the final SEIR does not adequately describe the brine reduction portion of the project. And that's my concern. How is it going to operate? Will there be chemicals on site that we need to be concerned about? We're all following with interest and great sadness the stories coming out of Houston, and you may be aware that there is a chemical plant that may be exploding there because of the problems of lack of electricity and the extreme amount of water. But there's a lot of details about this proposed brine reduction project that we don't know about, and we would like further answers before this goes forward. For instance, there's going to be a number of trucks going to the county outfall. We don't know. We hope that those trucks will be on the roads when the roads are not heavily traversed by people who are commuting. But there are other concerns as well. Finally, I'd like to give kudos to the lawyers on both sides of this case. As you may or may not know, I've worked with Mr. Beverlin here going back to 1999 in my capacity as a lawyer for the City of Los Angeles over biosolids, a land application in Kern County. And if you read the LA Times, you'd know that within the last week we've finally, after almost 2 decades, succeeded in resolving our issues with Kern County.
Thank you for your comments. Your time has elapsed.
And finally, Susan Durbin has brought much to this community in previous litigation that has improved the quality of our libraries and schools, keeping them open to 9 p.m. tonight for people who want to escape the heat. Thank you.
Tim Ben Boydston, and then Jeff Preach.
Good evening. I'm Tim Ben Boydston. I'm former city councilman and actually a former alternate to the Sanitation Board as a district representative, although I never had the pleasure of sitting in an actual meeting the time that I was serving. I would like to say I'm pleased to see that Mayor Smythe is Chairman Smythe this evening, and Councilwoman West is a member of this august body, and disappointed, as one speaker before said, that there is not a third person here. I cannot go into all of the things that I've been saying over the last 7 or 8 years with regard to the district. It's simply this. You can't say you can grow avocados healthily down on the plain over there in the Simi Valley watershed and say that 150 milligrams per liter of water for irrigation is okay, but over here in Santa Clarita, for the same reason, just avocados, that it has to be 100. Because that doesn't make any sense, and it's not real. The frustration level that I've had over the years is when I first came into this council so many years ago, and the sanitation district stood up and said, the reason we have to do this is because we're damaging the avocado and the strawberry farms, the strawberries are being damaged because of the chloride we're putting in the water. And as it turns out, that's not true. Even though when I put it in one of the ERs in writing, then the sanitation district came back and said, actually, we never said that. But of course they did. It's diametrically opposed, and suddenly we're in Orwellian, non-elected area of our country where people that are not beholden or responsible to the voters make decisions that don't make any sense. So, and I have to say, working with the sanitation district members, they've done an admirable job in doing what they were directed to do. They fought for years against this nonsense that there was damage being created downstream, and the nonsense that 100 milligrams was actually historical for this valley, and a bunch of other nonsenses, until they were instructed that then they had to go forward and work this out and go ahead and build a plant that's going to cost $140 million, or somewhere north of that if the chloride goes up when we get imported state water that makes us do that. So that's unfortunate. But they don't have a choice because they work for you guys, our elected representatives. And although I know some of you believed at the time when you said, if we take out your saltwater softeners and force a lot of costs on you people, we'll fix this problem. Everybody did, or most people did, and it did drop it, but it didn't fix the problem because then the state decided we're going to drop it down further to 100 milligrams. It's ridiculous. But you're going to have to stand up, and that's what I've been asking for all these years, and we'll say it one more time. Stand up and sue them, because that's the only way.
Thank you for your comments. Your time has elapsed.
I thank you.
Jeff Preach.
My name's Jeff Preach. I live in Castaic. Been out here about 40 years. Anyhow, I'm down here for kind of a different reason, I guess, is that I'm scared to death of this big government stuff. Last year, the sanitation district on my little tiny shopping center takes my sewer fees of $81 per thousand square feet. It was about $1,000 a year, my property taxes, and they jumped it up 500%. They went from $81 per thousand feet to 450. I mean, I think that's criminal. And my property taxes on that little shopping center went up $6,000, and I'm trying to pass it on to the guys at Helen. Half of Castaic is vacant now. Then last month, a little different subject, but on the same thing, the Chiquita Canyon landfill, the county turns around and raises the fees for our trash, 500%. It's criminal. It's absolutely criminal. There's just no end to these guys. They're insane. You just can't keep doing this. Now we're talking about we're going to have a new little boondoggle here with the ozone deal. And that's about $1 billion. And it's going to be, if you really, it might be another 400 or 500%. And for the next 50 years, we're going to be doing, and then once we get it clean, we're going to put it in purple pipes and not put it in the river anyhow? What's going on? Have some common sense, step up and do your job, and maybe work for the people here. And stop whatever it takes until someone shows up here with a judgment and a marshal and a gun to make you do something. Just you move on. Do it. Get the purple pipes and get the job done, and don't roll over for every boondoggle thing that comes along, and everyone gets happy because they're spending $1 billion in stupid government crap. Because we really have to pay. We really got to pay this. Anyhow, good luck.
Mr. Chairman, I would note for the record that the last speaker was not speaking on item number 5. He was not speaking on any item, as I can discern, that's on the agenda.
Understood. Thank you. Just apply that to the public comment. It's fine. It's just that would have been better suited at the beginning of the meeting, but we're glad to have your comments anyways, Mr. Preach. So,
I do not have any further public comments. Is this the time to close the public comment period?
yes, we will. Do we need a motion to do that, or the disorder? Very good. So then, obviously, district staff, if you would like to respond to some of the comments from the speakers.
Yes, I will respond to some of them I would like to just say up front that we have fully responded to comments we received in the EIR, but I'll summarize those, some of those that you heard tonight for you, the board, and I will also ask staff that we have here and legal counsel if they'd like to add anything at the end. First, I'd like to address the comment that you heard that we are motivated primarily by fines, and that is why we are trying to move forward with the chloride project separately from the recycled water project, and that is not the primary motivation. As I mentioned earlier, we operate plants, and we're only allowed to discharge the treated water under permits, and those permits that we operate do require removal of chloride according to a specified schedule, and if we are in violation of those permits, their regulators do have the authority to issue fines. They have issued fines in the past related to not moving forward with chloride. So our project objective here is for compliance. That's the driver here. You also heard comments about the fact that the recycled water project cannot be separated from the chloride compliance project because they're interrelated. But chloride compliance, the chloride compliance project and the recycled water project are functionally independent. They each have independent utility. One is about discharge to the river, removing chloride before we discharge to the river. The recycled water project is about diverting water from the river for municipal reuse. There's nothing about the technical or regulatory requirements for the chloride removal process that depends on how much water is beneficially reused in the community instead of being discharged. The chloride project is required by the state whether or not recycled water use is increased. Next, I would like to address the comment you had about concern related to the brine reduction strategy, which is concentration at the Valencia treatment plant and limited trucking, an average of 6 to 10 trucks per day to our joint water pollution control plant in Carson, which is an industrial facility currently permitted to receive the type of brine waste that we would produce. And I just wanted to mention that that brine approach, management approach, is fully described in the 2016 supplemental EIR, which is has been included in the final recirculated EIR that you have before you. And I did want to clarify that the trucking for the brine to travel down to the treatment plant in Carson would be occurring during off-peak hours. Lastly, I just wanted to mention a letter that we got yesterday from the Santa Clarita Organization for Planning and the Environment. Since we did get it yesterday, we did have time to prepare some responses that you have before you, but I just wanted to address one of those for you here in my comments, and that's related to the retaining wall that we are building at the Valencia Water Reclamation Plant. That retaining wall is an extension of an existing retaining wall at the plant along the river. It was included in a planning study for the Valencia Water Reclamation Plant site that concluded that any new facilities built at the site would require the construction of the extension of the retaining wall. And now that chloride facilities are proposed for that site, we are moving forward with the extension of the retaining wall. I would add that the court has specifically allowed moving forward with the retaining wall in that it's a different project that had its own CEQA analysis. We have received permits from the Department of Fish and Wildlife and are conducting construction in accordance with that permit, including biological monitoring. And that concludes the remarks I had, but again, I would invite staff or legal counsel to add anything they think.
If I could just add to,
Sure.
Mr. Boydston's comments about, and forgive me for, I'm new to, to the board and what you can and can't disclose of previous years about strategies and all, but, the option of suing the state or, if there's anything you can, discuss without violating any closed session or any, I'd like to just have that addressed as much as you can.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, as you correctly point out, we're not going to be able to go into legal strategies that were previously discussed with board members. I can assure the board, though, that over the years, and I believe Mr. Boydston was candid about this in his statement, we fought for years with the regional board with regard to the chloride limit itself. We fought the good fight in that regard on behalf of this district. With regard to other options, all other options from a legal standpoint were looked at, were discussed with the board, and it is what it is.
Very good. Are there any other staff
I have a question.
comments? Just make sure. Anything from the staff on the speakers first. All right, seeing none, then I will kick it over to Director West.
Thank you. I wanted to have us address Mr. Prisco's concerns about chemicals. You mentioned Houston, and let's talk about chemicals so that we can get that answered.
We, in our, the normal routine treatment process of the wastewater, we do use chemicals and would need chemicals in some of these future treatment processes. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we don't have the detailed design and process, but all of the chemicals that would be used would be used in accordance with all applicable laws and regulations.
Well, I just want to mention that we are doing ultraviolet to reduce chemicals.
That's correct.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, we currently use essentially a bleach chemical for our disinfection. We're required to disinfect our water before we discharge it. Using bleach for disinfection can produce harmful byproducts at low levels, and so as part of this project, the board supported implementation of ultraviolet disinfection, which is a non-chlorine disinfection and will eliminate the production of those byproducts that are currently produced and improve protection of public health.
I think that's a really important part of this process, is reducing potential chemicals like trihalomethanes, acetic acid, things that would be put on top of our groundwater, since we are putting 20 million gallons of treated effluent into the river. And I think it's important that we protect public health in every way we can. So whatever that takes to protect public health and whatever it takes to be compliant with protecting public health, I think is the most important thing for future generations. And I can't really see that anything that you haven't answered for us. So I guess that's the end of my questions.
Thank you. And if you could just, again, for me, the kind of the bifurcation, if you will, that just as we're moving forward with on the chloride side, it doesn't mean that we are no longer pursuing anything in regards to the recycled water, and that still is a component, of in a strategy and still part of what we're doing.
Yes, it's absolutely a commitment that we have to use the treated water and the production of our recycled water for the community. The board previously passed a resolution directing us to optimize the use of recycled water, and we're very much anxious to do that, but we want to do that in conjunction with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife requirements as well as the CEQA process. And so we will continue to move forward on the recycled water project, and we have not abandoned.
No, thank you. And obviously, recycled water is going to be, a part of not just our valley and our district, but statewide. I mean, that has to be, included now to, any part of our water management system, I would think, with that. So thank you for addressing that. Yes, Director.
I just wanted to say regarding recycled water that we have, half of our water in this valley is groundwater, and that's why we're so concerned about any chemical impacts to the river that we now know about. And I think it's really important that recycled water be considered. There was some discussion years back about us not putting any water in the river. It is now clear that Fish and Wildlife doesn't want any of the water that's going in the river removed without validating some specific criteria for that. So while we totally support recycled water, we also support fish and wildlife and whatever's necessary to protect the river habitat. But it's clear that you just can't take water out of the river, so maybe we'll have some of that 20 million and maybe we won't. But importantly, we will protect the environment to the fullest degree, and so I want to thank staff for working with Fish and Wildlife and making sure that that agency is effectively acknowledging all of the habitat necessities.
All right, so then if we have no other comments, if you could, kind of walk us through. I know we have to be specific in how we do the decertification and certification process, and so if whomever is lucky enough to walk us through that, please, I think now is the time so we can make sure we do this in complete compliance.
All right, well, I can take a stab in that. District Council can jump in, but as I mentioned, we previously analyzed the chloride compliance project in a 2013 EIR that the board certified, and a 2016 supplemental EIR on brine management with trucking. The first two items that you're being asked to consider are to decertify both of those, each of those EIRs, and that's because they have been included in the new final recirculated EIR.
Very good. Let's stop there then, so
Stop
we can do
at
that.
B.
Yeah. So
Stop
That's
at B.
5A and B, Mr. Chairman.
very good. So with that clarity, again,
I move to approve of item 5, section A and section B.
very good. And I will second that. And if we could just do a roll call on those, even though it's just the two of us, I still would feel good about that.
Smythe,
Aye.
West.
Aye.
We do have 2 votes, motion passed.
Thank you.
Unanimous.
Yes, unanimously.
All right. So then now items C and D.
Item C is to then certify the final recirculated EIR, that again, would become the operative, full and complete analysis of the chloride compliance project. And D will be, once you have certified the final recirculated EIR that analyzes the chloride compliance project, in D, you will approve the chloride
Very
compliance
good.
project.
And can we take those again together, or do we need to separate them? Very good.
I'd rather take them separate.
Very good. We'll take separate votes on items C and D. So we'll first look for a motion on item C.
Move item C.
I will second it. Roll call, please.
Smythe.
Aye.
West.
Aye.
Item passed unanimously.
So let's go to item D, and that's approving the chloride compliance project. So moved.
Second. Roll call.
Smythe.
Aye.
West.
Aye.
Item approved unanimously.
Very good. And then if just briefly, so where do we go from here then? So this goes back to, we bring the EIR back to district court?
Yes, that's exactly what will take place. We have a date already set in the court for October, and at that point in time, the court will take this up, and we hope is going to approve the recirculated EIR, and away we go.
Very good. I want to thank staff for your work and thank the public for being here. And we certainly feel that and certainly hope for a good result in October.
Yes, indeed.
With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. We are adjourned. Thank you all.